The escape pod spun slowly through the darkness of space. Inside, Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her hand against a deep cut on her forehead. Blood had dried on her fingers hours ago. The small cabin smelled like burned metal and fear. Through the tiny window, she could see the scattered pieces of her ship floating in the black. The research vessel Curiosity was gone. Her 23 crewmates were gone. She was alone. Elena checked the pod systems again. The oxygen would last maybe 6 more hours. The emergency beacon had been damaged in the explosion. No one was coming to save her. She thought about her daughter back on Earth and closed her eyes. The hegemony had found them 3 days ago. 4 ships, sleek and deadly, had surrounded the Curiosity while Elena's team was studying an old asteroid field. The alien commander had spoken in perfect English over the radio. "Human vessel, you have entered restricted space. Surrender immediately," Captain Morrison had tried to explain. They were scientists, not soldiers. They were just looking at rocks and taking pictures. The hegemony ships had opened fire without another word. Now Elena drifted in the wreckage, waiting to die. She had heard the stories about what happened to humans who traveled too far from Earth. The galaxy did not want them here. Most alien species saw humans as dangerous animals who had learned to use tools. The hegemony made sure humans stayed in their corner of space. Elena was thinking about her childhood cat when the scanners beeped. Something was coming toward her. She looked at the screen and felt her heart sink. It was another ship, but not human. The vessel was long and curved, like a silver leaf floating through space. Definitely alien. She watched the ship grow larger on her screen. Maybe they would just ignore her. Maybe they would think the pod was just more debris from the battle. Elena held her breath and tried to make herself smaller. The alien ship stopped next to her pod. A bright light scanned her tiny vessel from top to bottom. Elena knew they had found her. She wondered if they would kill her quickly or take her prisoner. Both options seemed equally bad. A voice spoke through her radio in heavily accented English. "Human in the small vessel, we see you are hurt. Do you need help?" Elena stared at the radio. No alien had ever offered to help a human before. This had to be a trick. Maybe they wanted to torture her for information. Maybe they wanted to study her like a lab animal. "I repeat, human vessel, do you require assistance?" The voice was soft and musical. It sounded genuinely concerned. Elena's hand shook as she reached for the radio. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez. My ship was destroyed. I am injured and running out of air. We will bring you aboard our vessel, Dr. Vasquez. Please do not be afraid." The alien ship extended a tube that connected to her pod's airlock. Elena had no choice but to trust them. She grabbed her small bag of personal items and moved toward the airlock. As the door opened, she stepped into the unknown. The alien ship was beautiful inside. The walls curved smoothly and seemed to glow with their own soft light. Everything was clean and peaceful. Elena had expected dark corridors and harsh lights like in the movies. This felt more like being inside a flower. 3 aliens waited for her in the airlock chamber. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin that looked almost transparent. Their faces were long and elegant, with large dark eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. Small crystals grew from their foreheads and shoulders, catching the light like tiny stars. The alien in front stepped toward Elena. She forced herself not to run. The being moved with fluid grace like it was floating instead of walking. "I am ship singer Thysera," the alien said in that musical voice. "These are my crew members, Velthon and Nissel. We are Keth Mori." Elena had heard of the Keth Mori. They were known for being peaceful farmers and artists. They rarely left their homeworlds and almost never got involved in politics. What were they doing out here? "You are bleeding," Thysera observed. "May we tend to your wounds?" Elena nodded, still not quite believing this was real. Velthon, a slightly smaller Keth Mori with green-tinted crystals, gestured for her to follow. They walked through corridors filled with strange music that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The medical bay was unlike anything Elena had seen. Instead of cold metal tables and harsh instruments, there were soft surfaces that molded to her body, and gentle lights that pulsed in soothing rhythms. Velthon's hands glowed with a warm energy as they passed over Elena's injuries. The pain in her head began to fade. "How are you able to do that?" Elena asked. "All Keth Mori can channel healing energy," Velthon explained. "It is a gift from our homeworld's crystals. We learn it as children." As Velthon worked on her injuries, Elena noticed Thysera watching her with curious eyes. "Dr. Vasquez, may I ask what you were doing in this region? It is very dangerous for humans here." Elena told them about the Curiosity and its scientific mission. She explained how they had been studying old asteroid fields to learn about the galaxy's history. The Kethmori listened without judgment. The hegemony destroyed your ship because you were learning, Nissel asked. The third alien had been silent until now, but Elena could hear anger in their voice. They said we entered restricted space, Elena replied, but we had clearance for this area. We weren't doing anything wrong. The three Kethmori exchanged looks. Elena could sense they were communicating somehow, maybe through those crystals on their heads. Finally, Thisara spoke. Dr. Vasquez, we must tell you something important. The hegemony has ordered all ships to capture or eliminate any humans found outside your designated territories. They consider your species too dangerous to travel freely. Elena felt cold despite the warm healing energy. So you're supposed to turn me over to them? Yes, Thisara said quietly. But we will not do this. Why not? Elena asked. You could get in terrible trouble for helping me. Thisara was quiet for a long moment. Because you were crying, she finally said. Elena was confused. What? When we found you, you were crying. Not from pain, but from sadness for your lost friends. In all the stories the hegemony tells about humans, they say you have no feelings for others. They say you are cold and violent. But you were crying for your crew. Elena felt tears coming again. They were good people. They didn't deserve to die? No, Thisara agreed. They did not. And you do not deserve to die either, Dr. Vasquez, so we will take you somewhere safe. As Velthon finished healing her wounds, Elena felt something she had not expected to feel again. Hope. These aliens had risked their own safety to save her. They had seen past the lies and propaganda to the truth about humans. Where will you take me? Elena asked. To Synthkar, Thisara replied. It is a quiet farming world where my cousin tends the crystal gardens. You can rest there while we decide what to do next. Elena looked at these three beings who had shown her kindness when the rest of the galaxy wanted her dead. She thought about her daughter on Earth, probably wondering if her mother was still alive. She thought about her dead crewmates and the research they would never complete, but mostly, she thought about how wrong everyone was about both humans and aliens. The galaxy believed humans were monsters and that aliens like the Kethmori were weak. But Elena was learning that sometimes the greatest strength was the courage to show compassion to a stranger. The ship turned toward the distant star where Synthkar waited. Elena did not know what would happen next, but she was no longer alone in the darkness. Synthkar was beautiful. As their ship approached the planet, Elena pressed her face to the viewing window and stared in wonder. The world looked like a giant jewel floating in space with green continents that sparkled in the sunlight. Rivers of silver cut through landscapes that seemed to glow with their own inner light. The crystals, Thisara explained, standing beside her. Our homeworld taught us to grow them everywhere. They help the plants grow stronger and keep the soil healthy. The ship landed in a small valley surrounded by rolling hills covered in strange, beautiful crops. Elena could see crystal formations growing between the plants like frozen lightning. Kethmori farmers moved between the rows, their movements graceful and purposeful. A small group waited for them at the landing pad. Elena felt nervous as she followed Thisara down the ship's ramp. These aliens had never seen a human before. What would they think of her? An elderly Kethmori stepped forward. Her crystals were larger than the others and had a deep blue color that reminded Elena of ocean water. Welcome, ship singer, she said to Thisara, and welcome to our unexpected guest. This is Elder Murthai, Thisara said to Elena. She leads this settlement. Elder Murthai studied Elena with ancient eyes. So this is a human. You look much like us, only smaller and with softer edges. The hegemony stories made your people sound like terrible beasts. I get that a lot, Elena said, managing a small smile. The elder laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. I think I will like you, Elena Vasquez. Come, let me show you where you will stay. The settlement was nothing like the human cities Elena knew. Instead of hard buildings made of metal and stone, the Kethmori had grown their homes from living crystal and plants. The houses curved and twisted like coral reefs, with windows that looked like flower petals and doors that seemed to open by themselves. Elder Murthai led Elena to a small house on the edge of the settlement. This was built for our young ones when they need quiet time to grow their first crystals, she explained. It will be perfect for you. Inside, Elena found rooms that felt alive. The walls pulsed gently with soft light, and the floor was warm under her feet. A bed made of what looked like moss was somehow more comfortable than any mattress she had ever tried. "Rest now," Elder Murthai said. "Tomorrow, if you wish, you can learn about our ways." Elena slept better that night than she had in months. When she woke, sunlight was streaming through windows that had somehow grown larger during the night. She could hear voices outside and smell something wonderful cooking. Thisara found her eating breakfast with a group of young Kethmori, who had gathered to stare at the strange alien visitor. "They have never seen anyone without crystals," Thisara explained. "They think you might be sick." "Can I touch your hair?" one of the young ones asked. "It moves like our crystal tendrils, but it looks so soft." Elena let them examine her hair and skin while she studied their crystal formations. She learned that each Kethmori's crystals were unique, like fingerprints. The patterns told stories about their family history and special talents. Over the following days, Elena explored the settlement and learned about Kethmori farming. She was amazed by how they worked with their environment instead of fighting against it. Every plant had a purpose and nothing was wasted. But she also noticed problems. The crystal gardens that powered their farming were failing. The older crystals were losing their glow, and new ones were not growing fast enough to replace them. The crops were smaller each season, and some of the farmers looked worried. "How long has this been happening?" Elena asked Elder Murthai during one of their evening walks. "3 seasons now," the elder replied. "We have tried everything our ancestors taught us, but nothing works. Some of our people want to ask the hegemony for help, but they will want things in return that we cannot give." Elena thought about the problem for several days. On Earth, she had been a soil scientist before joining the space program. She had spent years learning how to make plants grow in difficult conditions. Maybe human farming techniques could help. "Can I see your seed storage?" Elena asked Velthon, who had become her guide around the settlement. The seed vault was a beautiful crystal cave filled with glowing containers. Each one held seeds for different crops. Elena studied the containers and immediately saw the problem. "You're not rotating your crops," she said. "On Earth, we learned that plants take different things from the soil. If you grow the same crops in the same place every year, the soil gets tired. But our crystals are supposed to prevent that," Velthon said, looking confused. "Maybe they did when they were younger and stronger," Elena suggested. "But as they age, they might need help. Let me show you something." Elna spent the next week teaching the Kethmori about crop rotation, soil testing, and natural fertilizers. She showed them how to use compost and how to plant certain crops together to help each other grow. The farmers were fascinated by these new ideas. "Humans think like this?" asked one farmer named Siltara. "You see connections between things that seem separate?" "All the time," Elena replied. "We have to. Our world doesn't have magic crystals to help us. We had to learn to work with what we have." The techniques began to work. The soil tests showed improvement and the crystal gardens started to glow brighter. Elena felt useful for the first time since the curiosity was destroyed. But their peaceful time was coming to an end. Elena was working in the fields when she heard the sound of approaching ships. She looked up to see 5 large vessels dropping out of the sky. They were dark and angular, nothing like the graceful Kethmori ships. Hegemony patrol craft. "Elena," Tysura called from across the field. "You must hide." But it was too late. The ships had already landed, and armored soldiers were pouring out. Elena recognized their species from her xenobiology studies. These were Corvin, the hegemony's primary military force. They looked like giant lizards wearing high-tech armor. A Corvin commander stepped forward and spoke in a harsh, grating voice. "By order of the Hegemony Council, you will surrender the human fugitive immediately." Elder Marathai moved to stand between the soldiers and the settlement. "There is no human here," she said calmly. The commander hissed with amusement. "Our sensors detected human DNA traces throughout this settlement. The fugitive has been here for days. Surrender her now or we will search every building." Elena's heart pounded. She couldn't let these peaceful people suffer because of her. She started to step forward but suddenly found herself surrounded by Kethmori farmers. They had formed a circle around her, their crystals glowing brightly. "The human stays with us," Siltara said firmly. The commander's eyes narrowed. "You are harboring a fugitive. That is a crime against the hegemony." "Elena saved our crops," another farmer said. She shared her knowledge freely and asked for nothing in return. "We will not give her to you." More Kethmori joined the circle. Soon the entire settlement stood around Elena, their crystals creating a wall of light. Elena had never felt so protected or so humbled. "She taught our children to laugh," one parent said. "She cried when old Fentar's crystal tree died," said another. "She is not what you told us humans were like," Elder Mirthai said to the commander. "She is kind and wise and helpful. We will not let you take her." The commander raised his weapon. "Stand aside, or we will consider you all enemies of the hegemony." Elena couldn't let this happen. These people had shown her more kindness than she had ever expected, and now they were willing to die for her. She pushed through the circle of protecting bodies. "Don't hurt them," she said to the commander. "I'll come with you." "No." Thisara grabbed her arm. "Elena, they will kill you." "Better me than all of you," Elena replied, but the commander was looking at the crowd of determined Kethmori surrounding them. His soldiers were outnumbered 10-1. More importantly, the Kethmori were civilians. The hegemony liked to maintain the illusion that they were the good guys keeping peace in the galaxy. Massacring farmers would be hard to explain. "We will return," the commander finally said. "And when we do, the human had better be gone, or this entire settlement will be considered in rebellion." The soldiers climbed back into their ships and lifted off, leaving a tense silence behind. Elena looked around at the faces of the people who had been willing to die for her. She thought about how the galaxy saw humans as monsters. But these aliens had seen something different. They had seen past the fear and propaganda to the truth. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you," Elder Mirthai replied. "You showed us that the stories were wrong. About humans, and about what we thought we could not do." That night, as they planned Elena's next move, she realized something important had changed. The Kethmori had found the courage to stand up to the hegemony. And somewhere in the galaxy there might be others ready to do the same. The story spread like wildfire through the underground networks of the galaxy. Elena had been moving from world to world for 3 months now, never staying in one place too long. The hegemony was hunting her, but something unexpected was happening. Instead of turning her in, more and more aliens were helping her hide. She sat in a cramped cargo hold of a Vrick transport ship, listening to her new friend Kazik tell the story again. The small insect-like alien's wings buzzed with excitement as he spoke to a group of his fellow workers. The human taught the crystal farmers to grow better crops. Kazik chittered in the rapid Vrick language. Elena's translation device worked overtime to keep up. And when the hegemony came for her, the farmers said no. They stood around her like a wall and said she was one of them. The other Vrick workers clicked their mandibles in amazement. Elena had learned this was how they showed surprise. The Vrick were used to being ordered around by everyone. The idea of saying no to the hegemony was shocking to them. "But what happened to the farmers?" asked a young Vrick with bright green chitin. "Nothing," Kazik replied. "The hegemony soldiers left. They were afraid to kill peaceful farmers just to capture one human." Elena shifted uncomfortably. She knew the Kethmori settlement was still in danger because of her. But her presence there had awakened something in them. They had found the courage to resist, and that courage was spreading. "Tell us about the human democracy again," requested another worker. Elena had told them about Earth's governments during the long journey between stars. The Vrick were fascinated by the idea that leaders could be chosen by the people instead of appointed by the powerful. "Every person gets to vote," Elena explained for the 100th time. "It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, big or small. Everyone's voice counts the same." The Vrick workers looked at each other with wonder. In their society, only the Queen could make decisions. Workers like them were expected to follow orders without question. "Even the smallest worker would have a voice?" asked the young green Vrick. "Especially the smallest worker," Elena said. "We learned long ago that the best ideas often come from the people actually doing the work." The transport ship shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace. Through the small porthole, Elena could see their destination, Aquatica Prime, a water world where the Nethai lived. She hoped the aquatic aliens would be as welcoming as the Vrick had been. Kazik walked her to the airlock as the ship docked with the underwater city. "Be careful, human friend," he whispered. "The Nethai are proud people. They may not trust you at first." Elena put on the breathing apparatus the Vrick had given her and stepped into the water-filled tunnel that led to the city. Swimming had never been her strong point, but the artificial gills worked perfectly. The Nethai city was incredible. Huge bubble domes connected by flowing tubes stretched as far as Elena could see. Schools of fish swam between the buildings like living traffic. The Nethai themselves looked like a cross between dolphins and humans, with sleek bodies and intelligent eyes. But Elena quickly learned that the Nethai were angry. Their leader, a scarred old female named Deepcurrent Velasha, glared at Elena with obvious distrust. "So you are the human who has been causing trouble across the galaxy," Velasha said in a voice like rushing water. "The hegemony offers a large reward for your capture." Elena's heart sank. After weeks of finding allies, had she finally met aliens who would turn her in for money? "I don't want to cause problems for your people," Elena said carefully. "I can leave if you want." Velasha swam in a slow circle around Elena, studying her like a predator sizing up prey. "The hegemony says humans are dangerous. They say you spread chaos wherever you go." "Sometimes fighting injustice looks like chaos to those in power," Elena replied. This made Velasha stop swimming. "Explain." Elena told her story. She talked about the Kethmori who chose compassion over orders, about the Vrick workers who were learning they deserved better lives, about the growing network of aliens who were questioning the hegemony's authority. "You taught insects to dream of freedom?" Velasha asked. "I just told them about how we do things on Earth. They figured out the rest on their own." Velasha was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "The hegemony has kept my people trapped on water worlds for 300 years. They say we are too primitive to travel in space. But I have seen their ships. I know we could build better ones. Why don't you?" Elena asked. "Because they control the resources we need. And because—" Velasha's voice trailed off. "Because you never thought you could challenge them," Elena finished. The Nethai leader's eyes flashed with anger. "Are you calling us cowards, human?" "No," Elena said. "I'm saying you're not alone anymore." Elena spent 2 weeks with the Nethai learning about their incredible engineering skills. They had built cities that could survive in the deepest oceans and developed technologies the hegemony had never dreamed of. But they had been told for so long that they were inferior that they had started to believe it. Elena showed them recordings she had made of her conversations with the Vrick and the Kethmori. She shared messages from other species who were beginning to organize. The Nethai began to realize they were part of something bigger. The breakthrough came when a young Nethai engineer named Swift Current Tolan approached Elena with a forbidden project. He had been secretly designing faster-than-light communicators that could work underwater. "The hegemony says such technology is too dangerous for us," Tolan explained. "But if we had it, we could talk to Nethai on other worlds instantly." "That sounds like exactly what we need," Elena said. Working together, they built a prototype communicator using Nethai engineering and human improvisation techniques. When they tested it, they immediately received responses from Nethai settlements across the galaxy. Many had been trying to contact each other for decades. The effect was electric. Nethai communities that had felt isolated and powerless suddenly realized they were connected to millions of their own kind. They began sharing information, resources, and most importantly, hope. But Elena's presence on Aquatica Prime had not gone unnoticed. Hegemony spies had tracked her there, and a fleet was on its way. "They will destroy this city to capture you," Velasha warned Elena. "You must leave." "Not without a way to stay in contact," Elena replied. She handed Velasha one of Tolan's communicators. "Keep building these. Share them with everyone you can trust. The revolution needs communication." Elena's next stop was the Outer Rim, where the nomadic Zuran drifted between stars in their ancient fleet. These aliens looked like walking crystals and were older than any other species in the galaxy. The hegemony had exiled them from their home system centuries ago. The Zuran ships were massive and beautiful, carved from single asteroids into floating cities. Elena was brought before their council of elders in a chamber that sparkled with embedded gems. "We have heard of you, young human," said Elder Crystalline Harmony, the Zuran leader. "The whisper streams carry your story to the dark spaces between stars." Elena had learned that the Zuran communicated partly through quantum resonances in their crystal bodies. They could send messages instantly across vast distances, making them perfect for coordinating resistance activities. "The other young races are awakening," Elena told the council, "but they need guidance. They need to know that change is possible, And why should the ancient Zur-An involve themselves in the struggles of children? Asked another elder. Elena thought carefully before answering. Because you remember what the galaxy was like before the hegemony. You remember when different species worked together instead of being forced into castes. The elders hummed in harmony, their crystal bodies resonating with shared memories. The human speaks truth. We have seen the galaxy grow small and fearful. Then help us make it large and brave again, Elena said. The Zur-An agreed to use their quantum communication network to connect the growing resistance. Within days, the Kethmori farmers were talking to Vrik workers and Nethai engineers. Plans began forming for coordinated actions across multiple star systems. Elena moved between hidden bases and secret meetings, always staying one step ahead of the hegemony hunters. But she was no longer just running. She was building something. The network grew stronger every day. Species that had never worked together were sharing technology and ideas. The Vrik taught others about efficient manufacturing. The Nethai shared their environmental sciences. The Kethmori showed everyone how to grow food in hostile conditions. The Zur-An provided communication and ancient wisdom. And everywhere Elena went, she shared the most dangerous idea of all, that everyone deserved freedom, no matter what species they were born as. The hegemony began to take notice. Their comfortable control over the galaxy was slipping away. Reports came in of work stoppages on Vrik factory worlds, unauthorized communication between isolated Nethai colonies, and Kethmori settlements refusing to pay tribute. Elena knew they were running out of time. The hegemony would soon realize that killing one human wouldn't stop what had already started. They would need to do something much worse to maintain their power. As she sat in another hidden base planning another rescue mission, Elena received a message that made her blood run cold. The hegemony had announced their final solution to the human problem. Elena stood in the command center of a hidden asteroid base, staring at the holographic display showing Senthkar. In 6 days, the hegemony would arrive with planet-killer weapons. Every Kethmori on that world would die because they had chosen to help her. We cannot save them all, said Swift Current Tolan, his dolphin-like features creased with worry. The Nethai engineer had become one of Elena's closest allies. The hegemony fleet is too large. We have maybe 50 ships scattered across the galaxy. Then we don't fight the fleet, Elena replied. We save the people. Around the command table, representatives from a dozen species looked at her with confusion. Elena had called this emergency meeting when she learned about the planned genocide. The resistance leaders had come from across the galaxy, using Zur-An quantum teleportation to gather in secret. Elder Crystalline Harmony's crystal body chimed softly. Explain, young human. Elena gestured to the display, zooming in on Senthakar's surface. The hegemony wants to make an example. They're going to broadcast the destruction to scare other worlds into compliance. But what if those worlds see something else instead? What do you mean? Asked Kazik. The Vrik had become a leader among his people, organizing workers across multiple systems. An evacuation, Elena said. We save every single Kethmori on that planet, right in front of the hegemony's cameras. We show the galaxy that no one fights alone anymore. The room erupted in concerned chittering and humming. Representative Velasha of the Nethai spoke first. Impossible. Senthakar has 12 million inhabitants. We would need hundreds of ships, and we don't have hundreds of ships, added a new voice. Elena turned to see Captain Marcus Chen, one of 3 humans who had recently escaped Earth's blockade. But we have something else. Marcus activated his own holographic display. Human evacuation protocols. We've had to abandon cities, islands, even entire continents because of natural disasters. We got very good at moving lots of people very quickly. Elena smiled. This was why she had asked Marcus to join the meeting. Humans were experts at finding solutions to impossible problems. Show them the Mumbai Protocol, Elena said. Marcus's display showed a complex flowchart of logistics and timing. In 2157, we evacuated 12 million people from Mumbai in 18 hours when the seawalls failed. We used everything that could fly. Passenger ships, cargo haulers, private vehicles, even hot air balloons. Hot air balloons? Kazik asked. Anything that moves, Elena explained. That's the human way. We don't wait for perfect solutions. We use what we have and improvise the rest. Elder Crystalline Harmony chimed thoughtfully. You propose to use every ship in the resistance network? Not just resistance ships, Elena said. Every ship in the galaxy. Merchant vessels, passenger liners, cargo haulers, even personal craft. We send out a call for help and see who answers. The hegemony will try to stop them, Velasha warned. Some of them, Elena agreed, but not all. The hegemony can't be everywhere at once, and once word gets out about what we're doing, they'll have bigger problems than a few rescue ships. Captain Chen pulled up another display. We've been monitoring hegemony communications. Their forces are spread thin, dealing with resistance activities. Half their fleet is chasing shadows while the other half is trying to maintain order on restless worlds. Because of what you started, said Tolan to Elena. Every species you visited is causing them problems. Now Elena felt a mix of pride and guilt. The resistance was growing stronger, but it was also provoking harsher responses from the hegemony. Still, there was no going back now. Can we do it? She asked Marcus. Can we really evacuate an entire planet? Marcus studied the data for a long moment. With human organization, alien technology, and a lot of luck? Maybe, but we'll need every ship we can get, and perfect coordination. Then we'd better get started, Elena said. The next 5 days were a whirlwind of planning and preparation. Elena worked almost without sleep, coordinating with resistance cells across the galaxy. The Zuran quantum network carried messages to every corner of space. The response was overwhelming. Merchant captains who had never fired a shot in anger volunteered their cargo ships. Nethai deep space explorers emerged from the void with their massive research vessels. Kethamori agricultural transports prepared to carry refugees instead of crops. Even more surprising were the volunteers from species that weren't officially part of the resistance. A group of hegemony bureaucrats secretly provided evacuation route maps. Military officers shared patrol schedules. Scientists offered their personal ships. Look at this, Tolan said, showing Elena a message on his communicator. 300 Vrick transport pilots just declared a galaxy-wide strike. They're bringing their ships to help with the evacuation. Elena stared at the message in amazement. They're risking everything. Because you showed them they weren't alone, Kizik chittered proudly. My people finally understand that workers in one system are connected to workers everywhere else. The evacuation plan took shape quickly. The rescue fleet would arrive at Senthkar in waves, using the Zuran quantum jumps to appear simultaneously across the planet. Ground teams would coordinate the loading while defensive ships held off any hegemony interference. But Elena knew the most important part wasn't the logistics. It was the message they would send. We need to broadcast everything, she told the communications team. I want every world in the galaxy to see what's happening. Show them that when the hegemony threatens innocent people, billions of others will come to help. On the night before the evacuation, Elena stood alone on the asteroid base's observation deck, looking out at the stars. She thought about how this had all started with 3 Kethmori, who chose compassion over orders. How thousands of ships were converging on Senthkar from across the galaxy. Cannot sleep? Elder Crystalline Harmony materialized beside her in a shimmer of quantum light. Too nervous, Elena admitted. What if this doesn't work? What if we get people killed for nothing? The ancient Zoran was quiet for a moment. Do you know why my people agreed to help you, young human? Elena shook her head. Because you reminded us of something we had forgotten. Long ago, before the hegemony, the galaxy was a place where different species helped each other. We built great things together. Cities that spanned star systems. Art that could be appreciated by any form of life. Knowledge that belonged to everyone. What happened? Elena asked. Fear, the elder replied. The hegemony convinced everyone that other species were threats to be controlled, rather than friends to be celebrated. But you showed us that cooperation is still possible. Elena watched a small transport ship dock with the base. Through the viewports, she could see Kethmori refugees from other worlds. People who had already fled their homes to escape hegemony persecution. Elder, Elena said slowly, when this is over, what happens next? We can't keep running rescue missions forever. Crystalline Harmony's body chimed with what Elena had learned was Zuran laughter. Who says we will be running rescue missions? After tomorrow, I think the hegemony will be the ones needing rescue. The evacuation began at dawn, Senthkar time. Elena watched from the command center as ships began appearing in the planet's sky like falling stars. The Zuran quantum network allowed them to coordinate perfectly, with rescue ships materializing at exactly the right moments. The Kethmori on the surface were ready. In the months since Elena's visit, they had been quietly preparing for this day. Evacuation centers had been set up in every settlement. Emergency supplies were packed. Children had been taught evacuation songs to keep them calm. Elena felt tears streaming down her face as she watched the feeds from the planet's surface. Keth Mori families were boarding rescue ships piloted by Vrick workers, Neth-Hi explorers, and even a few brave hegemony defectors. Species that had been enemies or strangers were working together to save lives. Incoming hegemony patrol, Captain Chen reported from his fighter. 3 ships moving to intercept the transports in Sector 7. Defensive Squadron Gamma moved to assist, Elena ordered. She watched as a mixed group of resistance fighters engaged the hegemony patrol. The defenders were outnumbered, but they fought with the desperation of people protecting their friends. The battle was brief, but intense. 2 hegemony ships were disabled and the 3rd retreated. The evacuation continued. Hour by hour, the rescue fleet loaded refugees and jumped to safety. Elena had set up hidden bases throughout the galaxy where the evacuees could be taken care of until permanent homes were found. But the real victory was happening on the communication networks. Elena's broadcasts were being watched by billions of beings across thousands of worlds. They were seeing species they had been taught to fear working together to save innocent lives. "Look at the message traffic," Tolan said excitedly. "Resistance cells are reporting massive increases in volunteers. Entire worlds are asking to join the network." With 2 hours left before the hegemony fleet arrived, Elena made an announcement that surprised everyone. "I'm going down to the planet," she said. "Absolutely not," Marcus replied. "You're the most wanted human in the galaxy." "If they capture you, then they capture me," Elena interrupted. "But those people saved my life. I'm not going to abandon them now." Elena took a small transport to Synthkar's surface. She found Elder Murthai overseeing the final evacuation of her settlement. The confrontation above Synthkar lasted only minutes, but Elena knew the galaxy would remember it forever. Admiral Korthak's fleet, once so confident in their mission to destroy a helpless farming world, found themselves surrounded by thousands of ships from across the galaxy. Elena watched through the settlement's windows as the massive Allied fleet took defensive positions around the planet. Captain Sarah Martinez's voice echoed across all communication channels. "Admiral Korthak, you are outnumbered 50-1. Your mission here is over. Withdraw your forces or face the consequences." Elena had never heard a human military officer before, but Captain Martinez sounded exactly like what she imagined Earth's defenders would be. Calm, professional, and absolutely unafraid. "The hegemony does not negotiate with terrorists," Admiral Korthak replied, but Elena could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "We're not negotiating," Martinez said simply. "We're telling you to leave." Elena activated her communicator to reach Tolan, who was monitoring the situation from orbit. "What's happening up there?" "The hegemony ships are powering down their weapons," Tolan reported excitedly. "Admiral Korthak is requesting instructions from Hegemony Command, but he's not getting any answers. I think they're dealing with bigger problems right now." Elder Murthai stood beside Elena, her ancient crystals glowing with satisfaction. "Tell me, young human, how does it feel to start a revolution?" Elena laughed, surprised by how light she felt despite the danger. "I didn't start anything. I just told people they didn't have to be alone. Sometimes that is enough," Murthai replied wisely. Through her communicator, Elena could hear reports from across the galaxy. The Synthkar evacuation had triggered something massive. On dozens of worlds, resistance cells were emerging from hiding. Vrick workers were taking control of factories. Neth-Hi colonies were declaring independence. Zuran ships were appearing in systems they hadn't visited for centuries. But most importantly, hegemony member species were joining the rebellion. Elena learned that entire fleets of Corvan military vessels had defected, their crews disgusted by orders to massacre civilians. Even some of the ruling council species were questioning the hegemony's brutal methods. "Elena," Captain Martinez's voice came directly through Elena's communicator. "This is Captain Martinez of the UES Defiance. I need to speak with you." Elena's hands shook as she answered. After months of being the only human outside Earth's solar system, she was talking to another person from her home planet. "This is Elena Vasquez. It's good to hear another human voice, Captain. Dr. Vasquez, what you've accomplished out here is remarkable. When we received the first messages about your situation 6 months ago, Earth's government authorized a rescue mission. We had no idea we'd arrive to find you leading a galactic revolution." Elena was confused.
Messages?
What messages? From the Keth Mori who helped you escape, Martinez explained. They sent diplomatic communications to Earth, explaining what had happened to your research mission and asking for help. Earth's been planning this operation ever since. Elena looked at Elder Murthai with amazement. You contacted Earth? The elderly Keth Mori's crystals chimed with amusement. Did you think we would let our friend face the galaxy alone? Shipsinger Thaisara reached your homeworld through old communication networks. We told them that their daughter needed help. Elena felt tears streaming down her face. While she had been building a resistance network, her alien friends had been working to bring her real family into the fight. Captain Martinez continued, Dr. Vasquez, I have orders to bring you home safely, but from what I'm seeing here, I don't think you're ready to leave. Elena looked around at the Keth Mori who had stayed to defend their world, then up at the massive fleet of former enemies now fighting side by side. You're right, Captain. This isn't over yet. Then Earth stands with you, Martinez said firmly. All of humanity stands with you. Over the following days, the scope of the galactic uprising became clear. The hegemony's control was collapsing as species after species joined the rebellion, but it wasn't a violent overthrow. It was something far more powerful. Elena found herself at the center of negotiations between hundreds of different groups. The abandoned hegemony council chambers on the neutral world of Haven Station had become an impromptu meeting place for representatives from across the galaxy. The question isn't whether the hegemony will fall, said Velasha during one late-night planning session. The question is what we build to replace it. Elena looked around the chamber at the incredible diversity of beings working together. Brick engineers were sharing designs with Nethai scientists. Zoran elders were teaching young Keth Mori about ancient galactic history. Human diplomats were learning alien customs while teaching democratic principles. We build something better, Elena said. Something based on cooperation instead of domination. The negotiations took weeks, but Elena was amazed by how quickly former enemies found common ground. It turned out that most species had similar basic needs: safety, freedom, the chance to raise their children in peace, and the opportunity to share their unique gifts with the galaxy. The breakthrough came when a group of hegemony defectors arrived at Haven Station. Led by a former admiral named Vex Thor, they brought detailed information about the hegemony's remaining military assets and offered to help with the transition. Why? Elena asked the scarred Corvin officer during their first meeting. Why turn against your own government? Vex Thor's reptilian features creased with something that might have been shame. Because I watched your evacuation broadcast, Dr. Vasquez. I saw what the galaxy could be when people choose to help instead of hurt. My own children asked me why we were trying to kill the people who saved the farmers. Elena realized that the 10th car evacuation had done more than save lives. It had shown billions of beings across the galaxy a vision of what cooperation could accomplish. Parents explained to their children why strangers had risked their lives to help others. Young people asked why their societies couldn't work together like the rescue fleet had. The answer was always the same. Because the hegemony said it was impossible, but Elena and her allies had proven it wasn't impossible at all. The formal end of the hegemony came not with a great battle, but with a simple vote. Representatives from over 300 species gathered at Haven Station to establish the Galactic Cooperative. The founding principles were written in both technical legal language and simple terms that any child could understand. All intelligent beings have equal rights and dignity. No species has the right to rule over another. Cooperation creates more prosperity than domination. Every individual deserves freedom, safety, and the chance to contribute to galactic society. Elena stood at the podium as the final votes were counted. The Galactic Cooperative was approved by an overwhelming majority. Even some former hegemony loyalists voted in favor, convinced by months of seeing the alternative in action. Dr. Vasquez, said the Zuran moderator, as the catalyst for these historic changes, would you like to address the assembly? Elena looked out at the hundreds of beings representing billions more across the galaxy. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, from a dying escape pod to the founding of a new galactic government. 6 months ago, I was rescued by 3 Keth Mori who chose compassion over orders, she began. They saved my life not because they had to, but because they wanted to. That single act of kindness created ripples that spread across the entire galaxy. She paused, looking at Thisara, who had been given a place of honor in the front row. What we learned is that cooperation isn't just morally right, it's practical. When different species work together, we accomplish things none of us could do alone. Elena gestured to the mixed crews working throughout Haven Station. Look around you. Frick Efficiency, Neth High Engineering, Zuran Wisdom, Kethmori Harmony, Human Adaptability, and so many other gifts from species I'm still learning about. Together we're not just stronger than the sum of our parts, we're something entirely new. The assembly erupted in applause, chittering, harmonized humming, and dozens of other expressions of approval from different species. But Elena wasn't finished. The Galactic Cooperative isn't just about replacing the hegemony. It's about proving that intelligence creates cooperation, not competition, that diversity is strength, not weakness, that helping others helps ourselves. She looked directly at the cameras broadcasting to the entire galaxy. To every being watching this, from the smallest brick worker to the mightiest Corvan warrior, you have a place in this new galaxy. Your voice matters. Your ideas matter. You matter. Elena stepped back from the podium as the assembly rose in a standing ovation that lasted for 10 minutes. Species that had been enemies for centuries were applauding together, celebrating not just the end of the hegemony but the beginning of something unprecedented in galactic history. Later, Elena stood on Haven Station's observation deck with her closest friends from across the galaxy. Through the transparent walls, she could see ships from hundreds of worlds docked together. Former enemies were sharing meals, exchanging cultural gifts, and planning joint missions to explore the unknown regions of space. "So what happens now?" asked Captain Martinez, who had become Elena's liaison to Earth's government.